it's very important because I will push and push to do as much as possible, with what I feel like needs to be done or what I feel like God's leading us to do. But I usually push until you communicate to me that, okay, this is my limit for the moment.
Oh, great. Now I know that. So I'm going to start saying that.
Yeah, well,
be like
she knows the cycle we've been going through.
My cup is full.
But I have learned enough, though, through the past with everything that we've been through to know that when you finally sit down and talk, I sit down and listen. Mm-hmm. This week on Marriage, Life, and More, we're going to be starting a brand new series we've called Marriage Reset. How to go from roommates back to being soulmates in your marriage. We'll be back with the first episode of this series right after this. Welcome to Marriage, Life, and More. This is a podcast about marriage, Bible, and book studies, and we interview people that have inspiring, awesome stories. I'm Daniel Moore, your host, and as usual, got my beautiful wife, Michelle, sitting over here.
Hey.
She's our co-host for this podcast, and we're here again to give you guys another episode. We thank you for joining us this week. If you're not familiar with our show, check out our website. That's at www.marriagelifeandmore.com. Our platforms are there, YouTube and Rumble links. And we're also on the Christian podcasting app Edify. We're also on your Alexa and Google smart devices. And you can also visit us on social on Facebook and Instagram and X at CTGap Online. If you're a fan of our show, please subscribe. Feel free to leave a comment on our platforms and give us a thumbs up or a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. And we'd be eternally grateful to you for doing that. Well, as I mentioned here in the beginning, we've been kind of talking about this actually over a few weeks now that we had a series coming up. And this is the week we're going to be starting this new series that we've called Marriage Reset. And when I was getting ready to put this together, I came across a book about this, and I just got to thinking, you and I went through this exact thing up to the point to where we almost got divorced. And we technically, could look at our relationship to where we almost just became roommates in the way that we treated each other and the way that things happen. I know a lot of times people slip into that mode of being like a roommate instead of a soulmate without even realizing it. And there are a lot of signs for that on things to watch for in your relationship to try to stay proactive and make sure that you don't let your marriage slip into that rut. And we're going to be talking about a lot of that over the next weeks here. It's going to be an extended series. I don't know how long it's going to be for sure. There's 12 episodes, but I think some of the episodes are going to be more than one. They'll have different parts to them. So we're just going to go through this slowly and try to hopefully mend some marriages. God wants to work in your marriage, and He wants you to be the soulmates that He intended you to be when He made those plans for you to be together. And the people, unfortunately, when you think about it, the people that messes up their marriages are usually the people that's in the marriage. They're the ones that fail and do things that they shouldn't and kind of let things get stagnant sometimes. So we're going to be starting off this series this week with our first episode. And this title for this episode is Familiar Stranger, the One I Thought I Knew.
I feel like we're just two people doing life side by side. I mean, I love you, I really do, but it feels like we're running separate lives. We've lost that spark. We're not partners anymore. We're housemates. Those were the words Lena blurted out one night during what they had become their ritual of silently watching TV while scrolling through their phones. They weren't said with anger, just quiet ache. As they landed with the force of a wrecking ball in Caleb's chest, the irony was brutal. Caleb and Lena had been leading marriage workshops for nearly a decade. They were licensed therapists, had authored several books on communication and intimacy, and hosted a Christian podcast. They were the couple people came to for advice, but the truth? They were struggling to feel connected themselves. Caleb looked up from the couch and whispered, "Wow, I didn't realize you felt that alone." Lena could see in his eyes that the words hit deep, not because they were new, but because he suddenly realized how true they were. But their marriage hadn't always felt like this. When they were first dating, they were inseparable, madly in love, and hilariously overconfident. They would never forget the time a few months before their wedding when they decided to take a road trip from Charleston, South Carolina to Lena's hometown of Knoxville, Tennessee. I thought it would be fun and romantic, plus it'd give Caleb a chance to haul some of Lena's stuff in his dad's borrowed pickup. The plan was simple. Drive 8 hours, grab dinner with her parents, and start wedding planning in earnest. Caleb showed up that morning with a truck loaded, a giant bag of trail mix, and a very questionable playlist labeled Lena plus road trip equals love. "I made this for us," he said proudly. She listened for 2 minutes. "Babe, why are there 3 versions of Life is a Highway on here?" He grinned and he said, "Because life is a highway, and this is our highway." They took off down I-26, high on caffeine and low practical skills. Within the first hour, Caleb accidentally ran over a construction cone, missed 2 exits, and spilled a Dr. Pepper on his lap. Still, they laughed the whole way. They were building memories, so what if they were chaotic? But just about 4 hours in, the truck started sputtering. They pulled into a restaurant near Asheville, and Caleb popped the hood, pretending like he knew what he was doing. "Want me to YouTube it?" Lena said. "I got this," he said confidently, pulling out the truck's manual like it was a treasure map. 10 minutes later, the battery had died, and they were stranded. "I'll just call my dad," he muttered. "You're 27, Lena teased. "I think maybe it's time for AAA." They spent the next 3 hours waiting for a tow truck, sitting in the cab of a dead pickup, watching the sunset over the mountains, and eating an absurd amount of trail mix. They didn't talk about wedding details or even the broken truck. They talked about their dreams, how they wanted to raise kids, serve in ministry, open a counseling center someday. It felt like everything was ahead of them, wide open and waiting. When the tow truck finally dropped them at a tiny roadside motel in the middle of nowhere, they were too exhausted to care. The room had 1 flickering light bulb, flower curtains that had been washed since the Clinton administration, and a bed that squeaked if you even looked at it. But they collapsed into that bed, fully clothed, and laughed until they cried. The next morning, Caleb realized the reason the truck died wasn't the battery. It was because he accidentally pumped diesel into a regular gas engine. "I thought diesel was stronger," he defended himself, rubbing his forehead. "Stronger doesn't mean smarter," Lena said, snorting into her coffee. That moment became a metaphor for them. They started off strong, but somewhere along the way, they stopped checking what they were pouring into their marriage. They filled it with work, ministry, kids, schedules, and checklists, but not each other. And eventually, the engine started to stall. The conversation on the couch where Lena admitted her feeling alone wasn't the end of their story, but it was a turning point. They made some changes, weekly date nights, phone down after 8 p.m., monthly check-ins where they ask each other, "How's your heart?" Nothing fancy, just intentional. And sometimes they go back and listen to Life is a Highway, all 3 different versions. Because when you're wildly in love at the beginning, even breakdowns feel like adventures. But staying connected through real life, that takes effort, laughter, grace, and willingness to admit when your engine needs a reset.
And that's a cute little story to start out this series with. And I think there's a lot packed into that story.
There is.
Because it shows how over over the time of a marriage, how we both know how it was when we first started pursuing each other, and the butterflies, the excitement at the next date. And then we'd sit down, we'd have the dream talks.
Yeah,
about
happiness, laughter.
Yeah, the dreams that we looked forward to,
yeah.
In our life. And what's funny is here we are over 20, 25, 26 years later, and it's easy to look back now and think, well, half them dreams never even came true. And to be honest about it, a lot of the path that our life took, we never expected it to.
No.
It just things happen and things took place, and it caused us even to go off in a wrong direction.
Yeah.
With things, and it was so easy for it to happen. It's like, it seems like sometimes to me when I sit there and I think about it, when I was putting this series together, I thought about this a few times. I thought, it's crazy how we work so hard to win our boyfriend and girlfriend over, to try to get to that point where we're walking down that aisle and saying I do to each other. We'd do anything if we truly love that person to make that happen. Every little thing that comes up that upsets ourselves between each other or causes issues with each other, a lot of that stuff we really are concerned about is to think, are she going to break up with me over this?
Yeah.
Or is he going to break up with me over this? All that stuff crosses your mind. But somewhere along the way, it seems like in a lot of marriages, and there's some marriages that never deal with this, fortunately, they're able to keep that flicker and that flame going for their whole life. But honestly, I would say with all the people that I've talked to that I know personally, even within our own testimony, and just being online and looking at people's lives, it seems to me that more often than not, people for some reason seem to forget where it all started. And along the way, they just start letting things come in to take that time away from each other. And before you know it, you're just existing in a home together, And you and I both know where that takes you when you just start existing in a home together like that. And it takes a really big wake-up call. At the beginning of this little story here, it all started with that comment she made. The elephant in the room,
Mm-hmm.
She finally decided to speak up and say something. Probably speaks a lot for communication. We've talked about that many times. But if she had never said that comment and she just went with the flow and just kept letting the marriage go the direction that it was going, who knows where that would have ended up. They could have been eventually possibly getting divorced if they did not try to fix that issue and they kept letting that go further and further down the tube. And so that's a good way to start off this series, because I think it really sets the stage for what we're wanting to talk about here over the next few months as we go through this. Marriage that you have between you and your partner it's the most important relationship you have in your life besides the one you have between you and God.
Right.
And honestly, you and I have both learned it takes a lot of work to keep that relationship where it needs to be. But it's worth it. Mm-hmm. If you truly love the person that you're married to, you should be willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that you keep that marriage together and keep it flourishing. And, at the start of a marriage, everything feels magical. The world seems brighter and you're filled with optimism and joy. And you see your partner through eyes filtered by love and excitement. Every quirk feels endearing, even charming. A lot of times when we first got married, there's things that we would do to each other to irritate each other, but we were so in love, we'd overlook it. Mm-hmm. It's like I can vividly, think back right now and just think of a lot of things that when we first got together that were probably little flags that, we should have been a little bit more careful. But we were so in love with each other at the beginning of our marriage and so excited that we were married finally and had our life going, that kind of thing. We have a tendency to look over things like that until we get so used to each other. And then it seems like we kind of start being a little bit less careful about taking care of that relationship like we should. But we have to have meaningful conversations, truly listening and actually engaging with each other to make sure that that marriage stays where it needs to be. At the beginning, we go on dates, we pursue romance, we share laughter effortly. Decisions are made together without disagreement. And common interest deepens your bond. Sex is passionate and alive. You kiss each other with enthusiasm. You say goodbye with affection. When disagreements arise, they are resolved with patience and kindness. Mistakes are met with overwhelming grace and forgiveness. You dream together, pray together, believe in a shared future. You admire and cherish each other deeply, feeling like the best of friends or matched souls. That's the emotional high that often marks the early phase of a marriage. But over time, as this little story kind of represented here, subtly and almost without notice, things can begin to shift. Routine replaces spontaneity. We've seen that happen. Conversation loses its depth. Those quirks that once felt cute now irritate. Priorities drift and connections fade. One day you finally pause and realize that you feel distant from the person you once felt the closest to. You realize that you're in love with a stranger. As we look back on mine and your marriage, was there a time that you felt like that we were strangers when we went through everything that we went through because we just weren't communicating like we should? You didn't know what was on my mind?
I would say probably at the beginning, definitely with everything that we went through because we didn't talk, we didn't communicate, and we actually didn't really take a whole lot of time to ourselves. I think the demanding of our children, the demands of our children. Mm-hmm. And, and as I've said before in past podcasts, I've put the kids way before you. So there wasn't, there was a lot of times that I would say that, we could have definitely been strangers because we were so busy. Mm-hmm. When you have children, it's easy to do. And I feel like just not even children, but ministry work, if you're busy with that, or you're just busy in general, like the busyness of life, and I think that, I can definitely see us in that. And I see it now. I didn't see it back then. And I still think to this day, sometimes we can be that way, with your busy schedule and, with us just being busy. I feel like I'm like, hey, did I even say hi to you? It's like, and I feel like, it's harder on me than it is you. You're good with it. You just, again, that personality comes with it. I struggle with it because I'm like, okay, I haven't seen you. I haven't talked to you. I need that. I need that attachment to know. I guess I don't know if I want to say attachment, but I want to be next to you. That's my love language. I want to be, how's your day? What's going on? And just to be able to communicate and sit down and just talk. Yep. And so, I would definitely say in the past, and even sometimes now, we kind of get sidetracked.
Yeah. So let me set the stage here just a little bit, just as far as you and I are concerned. In the little story that you just read, you mentioned that there were a lot of different things that can get in the way of working on your marriage and making sure that you keep connected. And you mentioned ministry, work, kids, schedules, checklist. There's a lot of things that starts falling into place the longer that you're married. And, a lot of people sometimes think, well, our pastors don't have problems. They look at the leadership of the church, they put them on a pedestal because they think they got everything figured out and everything worked out. You and I, though, know personally, we know some people that used to be pastors that put their ministry in front of their marriages and got divorced. Pastors are not touchless on that, And
I think Satan fights them even more.
He does.
And they are definitely, they have so much that they have to fight. They go before the throne for their church, for people in general. And they have a family, but ministry is very demanding.
Yep. It is. It's very demanding. And so with you and I, just to kind of give a rundown of what our daily life looks like. So we both have a full-time job.
Yes.
And your job, you're an auditor for a bank. So it's very kind of a high-stress type of job at times. And so that takes a lot out of you occasionally during your busy times.
Yes.
I have a full-time job at a radio station. And so it's a ministry type work where I do the HR, payroll, a lot of the marketing type stuff.
A little bit of everything.
Websites, the phone app, IT, a jack of all trades, basically. Then I have my own business on the side. So I do computer repair and sales and all that kind of thing. So a lot of my evenings, my weekends, they're tied up doing my work with my job, trying to mix my radio station stuff in there too, because we do sports. So some evenings I'm tied up with sports at the radio station. And then at church, we serve in a couple different areas. And then we also are the coaches of our marriage recovery program at church. So we have people that we oversee in that ministry as well.
And then we do the ministry
and
ourselves.
we do it ourselves. We actually do mentor couples ourselves. It's usually a minimum 16-week process to minister a couple through restoring their marriage.
In which we're beyond excited
Yes,
for.
we love, that's what God's called us to do, and we love it. But we've had to learn already how to juggle things.
Yes.
And so one thing that I do like about us, though, because we've learned some of the lessons that we have learned, there are little bitty things that we are intentional on, such as like every day when I leave for work, we make sure that we kiss each other bye. We say, we love you to each other. We say, have a good day. I know I remember a few times where I've ran out to the truck to do some stuff or whatever, and then I'm like, oh, I got to run back in, and I have to kiss you bye and tell you bye and that I love you. I try not to leave without doing that. Yeah. And, to a lot of people, they may feel like that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
They may not think, but how does that make you feel?
It makes my day. I mean, because you love me and you're telling me you love me. It's just that simple action that really says a lot for you. Yeah.
And so we try to work it with everything that we do.
You didn't finish everything we did.
What else?
We you host the Rise Up podcast.
Oh, that's right.
And we also, at church, we are getting ready to start a pre-marriage.
Yes, premarital counseling, I guess you could say,
and then
premarital class.
And then on top of all that, we have 3 grandchildren, 1 on the way, and we're very involved in that. And so, I mean...
And then we do our podcast, and I do.
Oh yeah, we do our podcast.
And we have 2 sides to this podcast. For those of you that follow us, I do a Bible study side that I do for my own self, and then we do ours together for the marriage side. So right now, I'm putting out 2 episodes a week.
Yeah,
I'm at this point.
And he's doing something that God is leading him into. I'm not going to say. Yeah. But God has really
on the table right now.
Yes, it's been on the table that we've been praying about, and it's been taking some time. And then, just life. We cook, supper, clean, mow the yard. And that's the reason why I'm like, we have to be intentional. Yes, that's what I was getting ready to say. Intentional is the word that I was looking for. As they said, you have to be intentional. And there's times that, we're both so exhausted at 9:00 at night, and we just look at each other and we're like, hey, how's your day? It's like, we go to bed. I mean, there's times we'll be up till 11 midnight. And I mean, we read a little bit to like our minds.
Decompress.
Yes. Yep. And so, but we will have more conversations at nighttime in bed than we will during the day because we are. And, I feel the pressure sometimes. I'm like, okay, this is too overwhelming to me. And Dan's like, oh, yeah, we can add this into it. And I'm like, I'm going to punch you because I cannot take anymore, and I have to sit down and we have to talk about it because I'm like, you can do that, but I can't. And I think that's the difference in personalities. But you have to, that open communication, definitely, and be able to speak that. Yeah,
it's very important because I will push and push to do as much as possible, with what I feel like needs to be done or what I feel like God's leading us to do. But I usually push until you communicate to me that, okay, this is my limit for the moment.
Oh, great. Now I know that. So I'm going to start saying that.
Yeah. Well,
be like,
she knows the cycle we've been going through.
My cup is full.
But I have learned enough, though, through the past with everything that we've been through to know that when you finally sit down and talk, I sit down and listen. Mm-hmm. And then we restructure for that moment and we do whatever we need to do to get some rest, that we might go on a weekend trip or, just whatever it takes to get away and get away from the house for a little bit, for a day at least or something, spend some time together, and we restart over from there. But that kind of helps recycle our marriage and keep us on our where we need to be, because overall, that regardless of anything that you or I have going on in our life, me and you's the most important.
Right.
And we've learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
I know I'm not stupid. I know that if I push things too far and I try to push through too many things and try to, have too many loose ends hanging everywhere, that I know that does put a strain on our marriage eventually. And so I have learned within my own self how to, I'll go and go and go as long as I possibly can and everything's fine. But as soon as, you or I start having a little bit of some issue with, not talking as much as we should, or
getting a little snippy with each other.
Yeah, getting a little snippy with each other or whatever.
I can always tell. And like this morning, I apologized to him. I'm like, I think I've been a little snippy and I'm sorry because we just have so much going on.
We've been moving our son and daughter-in-law over the last few weeks, or the last couple of days. But over the last few weeks, it's been packing and whatever, helping them out.
It's been a lot.
It's been a lot of stress.
And we kept our granddaughter.
And trying to keep everything else going.
Overnight.
And so it is. It's real easy to get overwhelmed. It's real easy to try to push yourself too far. But in the midst of all of that, you can't lose sight of what's important. You can't just push everything else behind you and think, okay, it's just going to catch up with me later and it'll be fine. Because 9 times out of 10, it won't be fine.
No.
Because you're going to let that thing get out of control. And we're going to talk about that right now. It's actually, there's a little term for that.
I love this.
It's the little foxes is what it is.
I like that.
A lot of people look at things and they like, oh, what big thing happened in your marriage that caused you guys to fail and get divorced? It's like, you're not going to hardly ever find any one person that says one big, huge thing happened and it was over.
I mean,
that does happen occasionally, but it's very rare. More often than not, you're going to find the person that's going to say, well, it was those little foxes.
If they admit it.
If they'll admit it, it's those little bitty things that we just didn't pay attention to anymore. Yeah. And there's scripture for that, about the little foxes spoiling the vine. And, thousands of years ago in the poetic language of Song of Solomon, King Solomon's bride-to-be, known as the Shulamite maiden, offered a timeless warning about the subtle dangers that threaten love. She pleaded in Song of Solomon 2:15, catch all the foxes, those little foxes, before they ruin the vineyard of love, for the grapevines are blossoming. The historical essence behind this, in biblical times, foxes were known not for their size or their strength, but for their ability to sneak into vineyards and wreak quiet havoc, chewing through leaves, snapping branches, devouring grapes, and tunneling into the roots, ultimately spoiling and destroying the vine from the inside out. And what's particularly insightful is her choice of words. She said little foxes. She distinguishes them from the obvious dramatic dangers of the time, predators like boars or lions. Instead, she wisely emphasizes the smaller, stealthy threats that creep in when no one is watching. The seemingly insignificant issues that slowly erode a relationship if not dealt with promptly. Her message to Solomon was clear. Protect our love, not just from the obvious threats, but from the overlooked irritations that quietly destroy the foundation of our relationship. In essence, she was saying, let's guard our love by paying attention to the small things. Mm-hmm. They could be the ones that truly spoil what we're building together. And guys, I'm telling you, looking back over the years, with our marriage and even my previous marriage, and Michelle can say it for her previous marriage, there was a train of things that happened that led up to the bad things that happened within our marriages. And it was a lot of small things. And sometimes some of those small things, you got to remember there's 2 people in a relationship. It's not just one. What may be okay for me may irritate Michelle to death, or Michelle may do something that may irritate me to death. But if something's irritating me that she does, or vice versa, and we don't speak up, that can be a little fox, because eventually it's going to get to the point where that's going to be piled onto other things that might be going on. And then all these little tiny things, I think there's the saying you can don't make a mountain out of a molehill, that kind of thing. I think that's how that statement goes. And again, you're looking at something kind of small, which is a molehill, and then you look at a mountain, and that's, in essence, that's what this is saying. You got to watch out for these little foxes and these things that'll come in and try to destroy your marriage. You know, we can deeply relate to her warning in ways that we wish we didn't. Years into our marriage, we both broke down one day, overwhelmed by the emotional distance that had grown between us. At the time, it was hard to understand how we got to that place. But looking back, I now realize how small issues, or those little bitty foxes, had even quietly crept into our marriage. We had been blindsided by the subtle everyday habits that slowly drained life out of our connection. Little foxes that slipped in beneath the gate: neglect, miscommunication, unspoken frustration, dishonesty, busyness. These persistent minor issues didn't immediately destroy our marriage in a dramatic collapse. Instead, they changed us from deeply connected partners into emotionally distant roommates. And, you know, this isn't just our story. Many couples unintentionally let these small tensions and distractions go unaddressed, only to find themselves wondering where the intimacy and the joy went. So it's no surprise that researchers have taken interest in this very question around the world. Millions of people search for answers to why love fades, why partners drift, and what turns a once soulful connection into quiet coexistence. And often, it isn't an explosion that causes the damage, it's those little foxes.
So good.
And with my relationship, I remember how happy we were when we took off on our honeymoon. I look back at pictures of our honeymoon pictures.
Yeah, we don't even
We went to
look
Colorado.
alike.
It's like a whole different world.
Yes.
You know, when we look at that, because things have so dramatically changed, like you said, even from the way we looked, even up to the type of relationship that we had back then to what we have now. And it's like when you look at that, if you go back and look at those pictures, you know, when we were in our little trek through Colorado, we went to 3 different places while we were out there and looked at things and done a lot of fun stuff. It's hard to imagine looking at that thinking those 2 people had no idea where that marriage was getting ready to head. And if only they had known, those 2 people back then, you and I, had known what was ahead of us, what we could have done differently to head that off. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I know speaking for myself, I just thought that I had it all figured out, I guess, you know.
Same.
I just thought, okay, I got the girl of my dreams now. You know, me and you had liked each other for a long time, and the relationship that we had, I just felt like it was a win. You know, I felt like that the marriage that we had it's what I'd always wanted. And little to say and to know that I was going to be a huge part of messing that all up eventually.
Same.
And causing so many problems.
Same.
And, you know, all of you listening out there, maybe this is a time for you maybe to go break out some of your pictures from back then and just reminisce on what it was like back then. You know, I know a lot of times, especially for guys, oh, that's too emotional for me. You know, that's stupid. You know how guys are. They want to be tough or whatever. But you know what? If you've been through what Michelle and I have been through with our marriage, almost losing it completely, all that hard work that it took to try to rebuild back everything that we had lost because we allowed these little foxes to get in the middle of our marriage, you'd probably have a different outlook on that. And who's to say that some of you listening right now may be having that bad path right now that you're headed where Michelle and I ended up at. Maybe that's a good time to try to redirect this and keep it from going that direction, because I'm telling you, just from experience between us 2, we can both vouch for the fact that if you let these little things keep multiplying and you don't take care of them, you don't communicate through them or whatever, that you're going to have some issues. It's going to cause problems, and your marriage isn't going to go a direction that you want it to go. Share with us the next couple of paragraphs there that we've got.
Yeah. Every day, millions of internet users ask Google's life most difficult question. One of the most common Google queries is, why do relationships end? But I would have never, ever, I'm sorry, I'm kind of going off, but I would have never typed that into Google. So it's very interesting. So that's really sad that a lot of internet users have to ask that question.
Yep.
So author Nell Frizzle wrote the following. A wise man once told me that nobody breaks up over adultery, but over the way you talk at dinner. The small daily incivilities, the apologies unspoken, the kisses that go unkissed, the meals that pass in silence, the money that is wasted, These lay the groundwork for the big things to erupt. Infidelity happens, perhaps when one partner or the other is looking to plug a hole, not just a physical one, but an emotional one, a personal one, and a psychological one, laid bare by months and years of ugly lampshades, boring weekends, and lukewarm pasta bakes. Separation is perhaps the inevitable end point of eating at different times, sleeping on the sofa because you got home late, choosing to go on holiday with someone else, watching different things on your phones instead of going to the cinema, and making plans in which the other is not included. Social scientists have diligently searched for answers to this same question and have made some astonishing discoveries. In the United States, researchers estimate that 40 to 50% of all first marriages and 60% of second marriages will end in divorce. Why? Several major research projects have focused on the specific reasons people give for their divorces.
And I find it, what that guy said up there, that's very deep. Mm-hmm. I mean, it really makes you think about, a lot of the things that he mentioned there, the apologies unspoken. I mean, how many times do we do things to each other and we fail to apologize?
Well, it was funny because you talked about earlier how you would come back in and kiss me. Mm-hmm. And it says the kisses that go unkissed.
Yep.
The meals that pass in silence. I mean, those are important things.
Yep. Those actually reference to companionship. Mm-hmm. Those reference to being together, to spending that shared time.
Right.
And I do see a lot of times where a lot of spouses do things separately from each other. And I know that they're doing it for whatever reason, and they feel like that's it's whatever they do, whatever they choose, that's up to them. But a lot of times I wonder, though, well, what direction, though, is that really making their marriage head? It's like it really makes you wonder, do they really have that connection between each other that they could have if they actually spent time doing things together more often than doing so many things There's, for you and I, we've talked about this before, there's very little that you or I do apart from each other.
But you enjoy those things. That when we go
I
do
cherish
something,
us being together.
Still, I feel like there are some people out there that just don't want to do things. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If you have a marriage that is, you trust your spouse and you know that they would not want to do that, and you have a godly Christian friend or whatever, maybe, family or whatever, and go with them, that's fine, because that other spouse, as long as you communicate, mm-hmm. I think it's great. But you and I, that's just not who we are. I don't want to ever just down talk someone that's different than us. So I feel like you and I mean, it's just, we always want to do stuff together.
Yeah. But
we enjoy it.
Let's think of, what about this, though? It makes you, if I do something that I don't really care to do, that you love to do, and I go ahead and do that because I want to spend that time with you, doesn't that make you feel good, though, that I'm every so often willing to do that? And vice versa. I know it makes me feel good because if there's something that I know that's more my thing, but I still want to involve you in it. Mm-hmm. I still want you to, sometimes I've done a couple computer job type things that I've asked if you'd like to go help me. Mm-hmm. I don't always want it to be everything that I do, so that there's certain things that I always do by myself. I want to make sure that no matter what I do, whether if it's with my business or even radio station stuff or whatever, if there's an opportunity that you could go and do it with me and we could have some time just to spend together doing something like that, I always want to make sure I at least offer that, because I think that's more
I think it's okay if you offer it.
Yeah, that we're growing together.
Do this, but yeah.
And I think it's, every once in a while, for myself personally, I think just for the relationship side of things, I don't think a spouse should always turn that down. I think every once in a while it would be nice just to go ahead and go do something that you don't really care to do, because that reinforces with your other spouse, that you really do care about what they care about.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think if, you do one vacation, hey, whatever. And
see, I couldn't go on a vacation without you. Unless it was business related and they were paying for my way and there just wasn't any way you could go, but I had to go.
If you had a men's thing where a bunch of men wanted to go do, I'd be like,
that's different, though. I'm talking about just going somewhere by myself.
Or going
somewhere with, even just going somewhere with one friend, I just don't know
Like
if I'd want to do that.
I'd go do something with her.
Right. Yeah.
Or Paulette. I mean, those would be my two that I would probably take off and just go. Yeah.
Yeah. I know for myself, I like the time I spend with you, and so I like to see new things and experience new things with you.
It's because we love each other.
That's got a lot to do with it. That's for sure.
It finds you fun to be around.
I don't know how, but okay. But I think that just thinking about, and really this conversation that we're having here between each other, it's more just to maybe inspire you all to think a little bit, I think sometimes we can get really selfish in our relationships, and it's like what I like to do, I'm going to do, whether if you do it with me or not. I think I see that a lot sometimes in people's relationships, and that's not really the way it should be. And so you have to be, I think there's a space there where you can be a little bit more proactive and do things with each other. And I think the other spouse would appreciate that. And I do think that helps strengthen that bond that you have between each other when you're willing to do something that you just don't really care to do, that your other spouse likes to do. In wrapping it up here, as you were talking, that the scientists were searching for these answers, they did come up with a few things here that we want to share about that. There's a 2003 study that found that growing apart was fifth behind infidelity, incompatibility, drinking or drug use, and physical or mental abuse for why people divorced. So whenever they'd go and, try to get their paperwork to get their divorce going, that kind of thing, they always ask you why, and it always usually comes out as unreconcilable differences or whatever. But in all reality, those unreconcilable differences actually mean something. And fifth in that list is usually growing apart. In 2004, AARP surveyed older adults, age 40 and up, and reported abuse, differing values and lifestyles, cheating, and simply falling out of love or no obvious problems as the top 4 reasons for divorce. And how in the world can you have no obvious problems to push yourself to divorce? I don't know how that could be possible. It seems like there's got to be a problem. I mean, something failed.
I would say it's probably because they feel like more like
they don't want to admit it.
Well, that could be true too, but I feel like the more of the I've fallen apart would have to come up with that.
Yeah.
You have to have something.
Why
would you marry that person if there was no reason to, or why would you divorce them?
I mean, there's a reason just to simply fall out of love. I mean, I just don't understand how that just happens. I mean, there's got to be reasons. In 2006, a study out of the Netherlands found that the third main reason that females gave for divorce was growing apart, behind not enough attention and not able to talk. So communication obviously was first. The men listed growing apart as the top reason for divorce. But I still think probably in the growing apart, communication is probably a big part of that.
I would agree with that.
Would probably be my guess. In a study published in 2012, researchers found the 2 most common reasons for divorcing were growing apart and not being able to talk together. Here we are again, communication. And the last one here, according to the more than 800,000 individuals who have completed the Focused on the Family assessment, the top 5 marriage struggles are 1, sex, number 2, conflict, number 3, communication, number 4, shared responsibility, and number 5, time together. Interestingly enough, these struggles are how roommate marriages are described. Sexless marriages, not working through conflicts, no meaningful communication, household chores that aren't divided equally, and busyness and routine replacing quality time together. Feeling emotionally distant, struggling to communicate, lacking connection, or simply feeling like you've fallen out of love, even when there are no obvious problems, are all ways couples end up living like married roommates. And that's exactly where Michelle and I found ourselves. As a younger couple, we were unknowingly living out what researchers have described for years. Our marriage had quietly drifted into a crisis. The turning point came when we started to honestly examine what was going wrong after almost getting a divorce. Somewhere along the way, the passionate, joyful love that we once shared had faded into quiet indifference, predictable routines, and emotional silence. We were no longer thriving. We began asking the hard question, How had our relationship moved from being soulmates to simply shared space as roommates? Understanding that shift was the first step toward healing and rediscovering the deep connection that we had lost. And that's a good way, I think, to start out this series. I think that a lot of these statistics and these things that these scientists have found is like you said earlier, it's hard for you to believe somebody would Google something like that.
Even in the midst
But they're
of our
studying
times.
it. It's like that's the huge thing of studies today because it's so bad. I mean, when you think about 40 to 50% of first marriages failing in the United States and how many people are in this country, that's a crisis. I mean, that's a very bad situation. Of course, we all know that when you get married again, that percentage goes up every time you remarry. And it's an insane amount of people that are falling out of love with each other. Whatever those reasons may be, they're not taking care of their marriages. And it's so easy to happen because you and I have walked that. We know how easy it is to do that.
It's easy to put things before our spouses.
Yes.
Very easy.
Yeah. It's just not a good thing to do at all. It's very unhealthy for your relationship. We're going to go ahead and call it good for this week on that one. And we'll come back and finish up this first episode here in a part 2. And next week, we're going to be talking about 11 characteristics of married roommates. So if you're living together right now, married, and you're wondering, well, I wonder if I'm a roommate. Well, we're going to talk about a bunch of characteristics of roommates so you all can sit and kind of look at your marriages and put these little things in place and see if maybe some of these you guys are falling into, and maybe there's some places you might need to be correcting.
Yeah.
And so we're going to talk about that next week. So is there anything that you'd like to add to this one?
No.
Okay. Well, watch those little foxes.
Yep.
They'll sneak in on you and they'll tear that vine apart and you'll be in big trouble.
Guard it. Guard your hearts and your marriages.
And that's very biblical.
Prayer.
That's very biblical. All right. Well, we're going to call that good for this week then. We'll be back next week with our next episode of Marriage Reset. And we thank you guys for joining us this week. And we pray that after listening to this episode that your marriage is stronger and your walk with God is closer. And we pray that you have a blessed week. This is an extension of Connecting the Gap Ministries.